And you are listening to KOPN Columbia 89.5 FM. My name is Mike Hagan. This is Radio Orbit. I'll be back in just a few minutes. right. Good evening, everybody, whoever you are, wherever you might be, and whenever you might be listening to this radio program. Welcome to the program. It is Radio Orbit. It's Monday, the 10th of December, 2018. And before we get going, a big thank you to everybody holding down the ship earlier this evening. Woody gets things going every Monday from 3 to 5 p.m. Great show today, by the way, Woody, with the Real Deal Country Show. Left Ahead Radio coming after that, talking politics. We got Tech Radio bringing us up to snuff on the wild and wacky world of advancing technology. That's at 6 to 7. Then, of course, 7 till 10, Jazz plus Blues equals Art Down Under. And then New Wave Radio Theater just finishing up a short bit ago. Good music, good talk, good news. And hello to Jeff Stack out there. Appreciate the call, Jeff. Yeah, that was an interesting program that Kevin chose for New Wave Radio tonight. Hope there are other people out there that enjoyed it. A little on the dark side, certainly. But hey, that's the way it goes. It takes all things for perspective, I guess. Anyway, okay, before we continue, I say this every Monday, and I will for the next few weeks. Woody Atkins, the host of The Real Deal Country Show, which is, as I mentioned, every Monday here on KOPN from 3 to 5 p.m., Woody has been nominated for the Ameripolitan Music Awards DJ of the Year. And if you're not familiar with his stuff, he plays traditional classic country music along with Western swing and a sort of new genre in that area of music called Ameripolitan, sort of spearheaded by a guy named Dale Watson. But at any rate, Woody has been an advocate and a proponent of that music for some time, and he's been nominated for DJ of the Year for at the Ameripolitan Awards this year. Actually, he's been nominated for like the last 5 years, and he hasn't won. So this year, I want Woody to win. So I'm saying vote for Woody. All you got to do is go to Ameripolitan.com, and it's very easy. There'll be a big banner there that says vote now, and you can vote for different artists of different genres and categories of music, but you can also vote for the people that bring you the music, and that is the DJs. And there are 5 or 6 different men and women that have been nominated, but DJs... but I should say Woody, he's one of our own here from Columbia, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he's really responsible for a lot of the great country and Western and Ameripolitan music that comes here to Columbia and here in mid-Missouri in general. So anyway, go to Ameripolitan.com and vote for Woody. All right. Last week, we had Miss Tracy Johnson with us. Tracy is the director of the Children's Emergency Shelter at the Rainbow House here in Columbia. Pretty amazing and important work that they're doing over there. Really appreciate Tracy coming down. We had a sort of intense and pretty serious conversation, but good stuff. If you missed the show, you can listen online anytime. The archives are at my website. That's at www.mikehagan, Mikehagan. That's mikehagan.com. And just click on the archives page there, and then you can listen to any of these old programs. All the ones that we've done in the past are up there, and you can download them, or you can listen to them, or you can do both, and you can send them to your friends. All right, also great music last week coming from Opal Agafia and the Sweet Nothings. Keep an ear out for them, coming from the Ozark Hill country of Arkansas, and now making waves around the Midwest. Check them out on the web, or you can go to my music archives, once again, at mikehagan.com, and just click on the music link there, okay? All right, for tonight's program, my guest is, or will be, a remarkable artist by the name of Josh Galetly. We'll be talking with Josh from his home in or around Sydney, Australia. I don't know if he actually lives in Sydney, but he's somewhere around that part of the country. And we'll get with Josh here at the top of the midnight hour. That's about 45, 50 minutes from now, just a little while. He's a super cool artist and a real intelligent guy, and kind of cool story how we came to know one another. So we'll tell you about that when we get Josh on the air here in just a little bit, okay? For our musical accompaniment tonight, I'll be featuring the songs of a band called Beak. Real cool, kind of on the experimental side for sure, but I like it. And we started one off with... we started things off with a song called Egg Dog, and we're going to play another one here. This one is called 0898, but before we get to that song, I'll say keep it locked in here, keep it tuned into KOPN. I'll be back in a few minutes after this song with a special report from my friend Marguerite Rappold. She'll be speaking with Jean Gaddy Wilson live from Washington, D.C., and they'll be discussing, among other things, the 30th anniversary of her book called Working with Words. So stick around for that in just a few minutes here, and in the meantime, here's some Beak. This one's called 0898. You're listening to it on Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia. right, there's another one from Beak. We'll be hearing music from them throughout the program tonight. That one's called 0898, and you're listening to it here on KOPN Columbia 89.5 FM. My name is Mike Hagan. This is Radio Orbit, and I'm going to hand it over here to my friend Marguerite Rappold. She's got a little report for us, I should say, with a woman named Jean Gaddy Wilson, and they're going to talk about language. I'll be back in just a little bit, and here's Marguerite.
Hi, Marguerite here, reporting with Jean Gaddy Wilson. Jean, are you there?
I am.
Hi.
Hi, Marguerite.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good. So you have a pretty incredible body of work, and I hoped this evening that we could just talk a little bit about your latest project. As you mentioned before, it is the 30th anniversary, 10th edition of Working with Words, which you were a co-author of. A little background on you. You've worked in education as a consultant for multiple organizations and nonprofits, and currently this is what you are doing. So I just wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about what the basis of this book is.
Well, thanks for having me on, Marguerite. Working with Words is one of the top journalism textbooks, and I have two co-authors, and it's out of the Missouri group. Primarily faculty members from the University of Missouri School of Journalism. Never did I ever imagine that those years ago, when Brian Brooks approached me saying, we're putting together a new textbook, and we'd like to have you give us all of your information on, I think they were calling it inclusive language then. Never did I understand at that moment that I would have 30 years of watching one of the major stories on the globe come about, and it's through language, words, and what we expect and stereotype portray people to be. So you may have noticed that the major conversations in the United States, and sometimes I think across the world in the past 3 years, has been about how are we coming to new agreements about whether we protect the accused or the abuser. And because of the huge change in technology, there's now evidence-gathering tools in the hands of the people who have been primarily used instead of venerated. It would include women, minorities, children, the aged, anyone that's the disabled, Native peoples. So, a majority of the population.
Yeah.
What else would you like to know?
Well, I believe when we talked before, you discussed that the 3 points were sexism, racism, and languageisms, and just kind of where we go with that in the future. So you discussed a longevity revolution and a plan for that. I know you've been an advocate for many different parties, worked as a consultant, as I said before. So if you could just elaborate on that, I think it would be wonderful.
I've had my journalism career has led me to work with huge companies to turn them around and take a look at the future and what's coming. So I've also done intelligence work and Department of Defense work. While we're having this huge shift in technology that puts the camera, the video, the photograph, and publishing platform all in the palm of your hand, we also have these huge revolutions that are taking place. The longevity revolution is simply this. Before 1948, people in their 20s and 30s died regularly. Now, after the advent of antibiotics and different kinds of health care, people across the globe regularly live above the age of 70. Now, that revolution, we might think, is there and done. No. Major sweeps of the economy have to bend to that imperative. We have about 44 million people over the age of 65. In about another 20 years, we're going to have 88 million. You can look at that and figure out the changes that are coming in your culture, in your health care, education, food, water, whatever. So Think about technology occurring and speeding the possibility of these unforeseen different human events. Longevity revolution would be one of those. Another one of those is the equality revolution. Yes, there are 5 genocides going on right now, but another one sort of not named but occurring in Yemen. What that means, though, at the same time, is that we are having, with more than half the globe equipped with cell phones, smartphones in their hands, or internet access, they now have a voice to talk about the inequities they face. And that meets up with people of goodwill and people who look at those findings and then lead forward more critical thinking.
I apologize, and I mean to interrupt, but if you could hold the phone just a little closer to you. We're having a little difficulty with, you calling in from across the country, so I would like you to continue exactly what you were saying, but if you could just speak up a little bit.
Technology, as we were talking about, is sometimes difficult to deal with. When you have technology, longevity, equality of races, and then you have the gender revolution, you have every day a new day that's not been there before in the way people think about each other. In the gender area, we see across the world that when women and men have a choice, they have fewer and fewer children. That changes healthcare, that changes education. We also have even a more extraordinary thing that comes out of this combination of equality, revolution, gender revolution, and racial evolution. We have now fewer than 10% of people across the globe in severe poverty. That's huge.
Yes.
That's new.
So
our biggest problems are trying to see the world as it really is, rather than the one we've been given in language that we learned when we were 3. Doesn't make any difference that by 2015, the majority of children across our schools, entering schools, are minorities.
And we're discussing an exponential issue, I think, that is maybe the base point of what you're trying to say, is that the acceleration of it exponentially, these are issues that we need to address and come up with solutions for and understand the impact that we are currently having.
Marguerite, I think what's really cool about this is that now becomes the individual's responsibility.
Okay.
To dig in and figure that out, because all of these things also lead with the change in work, food, health, etc., and robots. The future of work is really one where each person will be able to and will have to figure out how to use those resources as jobs diminish and employment goes away. That's not a world most people are even thinking about, but it's already there.
This is Mike, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick. I wanted to ask you a question with regard to that. I do radio some of the time, but I also work in manufacturing. I'm in quality control for a manufacturer here in town, but I've been doing that for close to almost 30 years now, and I've seen the advance of technology, robotics, automation replace a significant part of our own workforce in the company that I work for, and I certainly see that as an inevitable. It's happening. It's not about whether it's going to happen or not. It's already happening, and if you would, could you expand a little bit on what you think about the future of work might be?
Well, we're not going to get in the emotion of it. Let's look at the physical part of it first. The inevitable is around the corner, yes. When there is a disruption, and cars and trucks no longer need human beings to drive them, it's hard to imagine how disruptive that is. So many people in so many jobs will have no function. And media people have had a taste of that as many of the media outlets have gone down. So what do people do? They look for an ancillary place. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is writing the new platforms. Yes, it's true that YouTube is huge, but who knew that a 7-year-old would be, and his family would be making $22 million this year and selling advertising on his looking through unboxing video games and then playing them. Ryan's Toy Secrets were last year $11 million in income, this year 22, so $33 million in 2 years. That's a new platform. At the same time, things that people have been prepared for are systems that are going away. This is probably not a very importantly happy thing to say in the college community, but one of our better people who has paid attention to innovation, Clayton Christensen, predicts that colleges and universities could implode within 15 years.
Well, I think that's
because there won't be a need for those.
Exactly. There's so much access to information now with the internet and with all of these devices that the language really is changing, or what you're saying. Also, people prepare for a short, really your life is not terribly long if you look at it in terms of history. Even though we are living longer, still, 401k can disappear overnight at this point, and there are children that have grown up in a new world, basically, with all of these things at their fingertips, and so their education is changing. Their access to that knowledge, or what they're even paying attention to, is really changing. So I believe that there is a difference in evolution at this point, and like I said, exponentially. So
where does that leave you as an individual? You, Mike, or you, Marguerite? It leaves you with no map. And we're not to the point where you can take on the entertainment values and be mesmerized by those instead of thinking about how those platforms can be the place where you can carve out an individual future.
I completely agree. That's brilliant.
Well,
it is. We're at this kind of met road. We're at a basically a four-way right now, and it's like you don't know which way to turn.
Well, actually, you're a 360 way because there are a lot of different degrees, but yes, I agree with you. What's true and interesting, though, is that you can already see these things in action. We're not talking about the future. We're talking about the present. What's occurring, and it's already done.
Yeah.
That's the past. So what's coming is going to be in combination of those revolutions. It's what human beings are doing as well as what their technology is doing, and they're both evolving at the same time. The question is, we only have one globe, and it is changing and evolving as well. It appears right now not to be evolving toward a better place, but to a more disastrous place.
Well, do you think
that also has to figure in your thinking?
Do you think then that we really are reaching a climax? I know the political climate has been very rough in the last couple of years, and like you said, with all of these, first of all, people becoming a lot more vocal about issues, our personal desires, and simultaneously being focused on their technology in the world that half of us are trying to move into and the other half are starting out in. Do you think that there's a positive outcome with all of this?
Well, I guess, my educated guess, because I do a lot of futures work, is that there are a number of people that will look for possibilities and make those things happen. There will also be a number of people that will seek out things they don't like and will make boxes for themselves, and they won't do well. Now, anyone listening, the three of us on the phone, we had ancestors that somehow looked up, sniffed the wind, smelled the fire, moved on, moved out of the path of the dinosaur, moved to a different area. Migration is a hallmark of the evolution of humans, plants, and animals. And so the situations that we see or sense or ignore totally all have something to do with possibilities that we can either create with or fight against. And creating with those is going to be hard because we've lived through a period of time here where we've had factories and concepts such as retirement and systems that deliver certain goods. We also have a time where if our highway system went down within 3 days, what kind of food would any city in Missouri have? We grow corn and beans, cattle, etc., and ship those out as commodities. Then we buy them back in packaging as cornflakes, other things. Mm-hmm. We don't have the way to support ourselves. I'm certain that there are many people in Clemson who thought of this. We don't have the way to support ourselves with food. That's also in play. So there's not one way to look at it, but there are a lot of things to look at and question, and then think about your adaptability.
And that's an interesting question that I've asked many times is, when does modern convenience become almost a detriment? So if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them. I've told this story before. I remember when automated sink systems first came in, and I went to use the restroom, and the toilet didn't flush, and there was still a button on top of it so you could flush it. And then I went to use the sink to wash my hands, and the automated sink didn't work. And so I was just, kind of out of luck with that one. But I'm interested in your ideas on the balance of the evolution of technology and remembering where we came from. Remembering when we started to, we weren't sleeping on the ground anymore. We came up with beds. Do you think that there's a balance we can strike at this point to not necessarily, we need to evolve. We need to be a part of the present world, but at the same time, remember that we are human and at some point, primal. And I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
No.
Like the illusion of convenience.
Those are huge questions, but let's think about it in a little piecemeal way. There are certain things you need to subsist. You have to have housing. The Maslow hierarchy, for instance, puts a whole lot of those in order, but you can breathe. You can live without air for 4 minutes, without water for 4 days, without food for 60. Now, at the end of any day, you're not doing well. But, so you have to have those things. Being able to figure out how to have those things occupies very little space in anybody's brain now. Well, some people, of course. So knowing about those kind of physical imperatives and being able to provide that might be a possibility. At the same time, you're creating something that's a global game, which would be what we might say, quote-unquote, modern. But who knows what modern is? The iPhone came about in 2007. Amazon shipped its first shipping in 1997. The things that we looked at as standard occurred in the past 10, 15 years. So at the same time, you're living in a world that's evolving along the across human systems. At the same time, you're looking at being able to provide resources for yourself. You are human after all. You are not a rock. You have to have ways to provide for yourself and others the more physical things. So I think piecemeal looking at it would be smart to do the Yogi Berra. Go two directions at the same time. That might be the only thing that works. You can't ignore and be behind what is going on in technology because that'll potentially wipe you out. At the same time, you can't ignore and expect anybody to provide you the system for food and sustenance. So I'm talking about systems going forward, backward, in the middle, all of those probably, to get to your point, need a resilience and a sense of possibilities and creativity and innovation that most of us who spend our time being entertained don't realize. So your question brings forth, what's the best way to thrive in the next 5 years or 10 years? Nimble thinking, agility, making friends with your neighbors because your best defense at a bad time is a good neighbor. So I guess living fully will take new explorations. It's important to think that what we're going through in cultures, as Eugenia Ching says in a logic book, that we're making a decision now about whether we protect the people who abuse or we turn and look at the people who have been weaker and haven't had the power who are abused. Which do we protect? If you would look at the past 4 marches of protest, all after President Trump came in, they're all about the others, the outsiders, who, with the technology that's present, can now demand an equal chair at the table. Do you hear the possibilities in what I'm saying, or do you hear doors closed? Different people will hear different things.
And this kind of ties back into, the concept of language and the way that it's presented, and really everything that you've been speaking to in your advocacy. It all comes down really to a choice, and I think really to exposure, resources, and education. So even the same way that we can talk about Trump supporters, just wanting to hear what they want to hear, that's, as you said, we are becoming more and more diverse in what we say, the platforms we have to say it. And I really do believe that it is more an issue of education. So going back to the technology point, a lot of people are feeling isolated, obsolete, and as Mike was talking about, working in manufacturing. And so now everyone does have that platform, and so there's a lot more calamity of attitude, I think. But really what we need to do is kind of bond together and try to hear each other.
Let me go the other direction.
Okay.
I rarely talk about what anybody thinks because I don't know. I know what they say. I know the biases that we learn when we're 3 are really hard. And our parents and all of our culture did everything they could to equip us. They just taught us about that time.
Mm-hmm.
But that time, it's just that time. It's not the same. I'm now writing in this textbook for people born in 2000. So I have to be with them and look at things more through their eyes and the possibility. Anyone in manufacturing who's had a downturn will have some kind of reaction or response, but it's not all the same. Some people will go on and take that very material and create whole new industries. Mm-hmm. Other people will try really hard and get nowhere. Other people will sit down. All I'm saying is, if we hardwire categories, such as we do in racist, sexist, other languages, other terms, we build little boxes that we don't see any possibilities coming through. Does that make sense?
Oh, I think certainly. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I think it makes great sense, and I think that Jean's right. It's going every which way at the same time, and it's very difficult to say sort of where it's going to end up. And the best you can do is the best you can for you and yours and your tribe and your community. I think I tend to think that the most impact that a person can have is locally and regionally perhaps, but mostly where you're at is where you can have the most impact, as opposed to throwing your efforts overseas somewhere perhaps. But
well, and I would say that just a little differently, because what you're called to do, what you're good at, there's opportunity in every one of those areas. And by the way, alive thinking people are a great set of possibilities. And the only way I know most people come to the point where they have that possibility thinking is after they've had breakdowns. I don't mean nervous breakdowns, but defeat.
Well,
People who have had failures are the ones you can count on a lot of times to create the new.
I think that that's completely accurate, and I think that if you look into anyone that's been, fairly successful for the most part, they have had some sort of experience that led them to try to find their presence in their own life. I love what you said about framing and perspective when we spoke on the phone. We do need to wrap this up, but I'm going to leave Mike with a final thought with you, and thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Well, it's an interesting conversation. I wish we could continue it. Perhaps we can extend our conversation down the road here a little bit and take a little bit more time to spend with you in the future sometime, Jean.
Do I have one possibility I leave with you?
Absolutely.
How you might see the world, and how anyone listening might see the world anew.
Love the final thought.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes actually, so no rush.
Well,
say whatever you'd like.
Here's a great way to pull new knowledge from you for yourself, i.e., tool you use for yourself. If you every day wrote down every single complaint you made, you'd be surprised, yes? And then keep a second list of every complaint you hear anybody else having, or even intimate. Then look at those complaints, and you can do this in a whole lot of ways. But if you look at those complaints, you know that every one of those, solving every one of those, is a business. Think about one of the huger businesses in the world. Socks. Kleenex. Are we through inventing different kinds of socks? No. Are we through inventing, I know I called it Kleenex when it's really tissue.
Good call.
God.
Nice catch.
That's good marketing, right?
Well, what we're also doing is I am demonstrating labeling language that cuts off instead of turning on. Kleenex cuts off tissue, and pointing out that mistake gives a more open door to all other kinds of potential things you can do with or without material.
Yeah, and I think that's a really wonderful point to end on, is just that we have these very specific ideas of a tissue and a Kleenex are different. Kleenex, that's a brand. Tissue is open-ended. It's material. So,
but also, you can think about the weather, how it's going to change, and what kinds of Kleenex or tissues will be necessary, or if there will be any, or you'll have to have replacement noses, or sillier you get, by the way, when you untether yourself from concrete, already solved, box you in solutions, the more fully you live, too, by the way.
Well, I think that's...
But that's just a side impact.
That's all about the framing and perspective, and that's wonderful. So thank you so much
And-
for being on.
I would say on my last note on this, I hope you find and really take in those lists of what you complain about and what other people complain about. You'll notice something else about living. And I'll leave that up to you to figure out what it is.
That's a good challenge. And hopefully you'll be able to come and join us again.
How can people get a hold of you or find you if they want to buy your book or if they want to find you on the web or something like that?
Well, actually, mine is, I'm in Brian Brooks, Jim Penson, and I write Working with Words. It's a Macmillan textbook. Journalism students across the world, actually across the world, buy it for classes, but it also turns out being a really good handbook. And I really don't invite people to talk to me much because I am a consultant. I charge a really large price for a daily rate simply because I'm not interested in working with someone unless they'll fork over enough real money that they'll then give me their time. The money's the easy part. The harder part is letting go and inventing.
All right. I
Like
think
we
that's-
have pictures of ourselves that are not yet complete. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Marguerite.
Hey,
I can't thank you enough.
Thank you very much. We'll talk
Thank
again
you.
someday, Jean.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye
Bye.
now. All right. That was Miss Jean Gaddy Wilson. Marguerite, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having
Well
me.
done, actually. And let's talk about this for a minute. So, for all my listeners out there, they're like, hey, Mike, who the hell's Marguerite, right? So, Marguerite, you may have heard her a few weeks ago, I think. We talked a little bit on the air about some just kind of social situations here in Colombia. But we become friends, and she has a little aspiration to do some journalism and perhaps radio. And so, we're trying out a couple things here. And yeah, she was friendly with Miss Wilson, and who is actually a remarkably accomplished woman. And I thought it was real cool that she was able to get her on the phone to talk with us for a little bit. So thank you. That was well done.
How'd I do, boss?
You did good, and for your first time, absolutely, you did great. And it's all about doing it more than anything, you know, because the conversation's great. I mean, so what if we skip around here or there a little bit? It doesn't matter. I mean, you got 25, 30 minutes of really good information from Jean Gaddy Wilson.
Yeah, and I can't
Right?
thank her enough for coming on too. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, she's in Washington D.C. obviously, and had a long day of meetings with editors, and so yeah, it was pretty rad. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll do that again. And we'll say goodbye to Marguerite right now. And I will say hello. It's Mike. You're listening to Radio Orbit on KOPN Columbia. We have got about 12 minutes or so before the top of the hour. Normally we would do space weather and talk a little bit about the news. I'm going to play a song here, though, because I've got to get my guests on the phone. Pardon me, his name is Josh Galetly, and he's an artist who's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to talking with Josh here at the top of the hour. So let me get my act together here. We're going to play one more from Beak here. This one's called RSI, and great stuff, by the way. And we'll come back in a few minutes, talk a little bit about the news, maybe a memorial or two, and then we'll have Josh Galetly at the top of the hour. It's Mike. You listen to Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia.
Say
All right, there's another one from Beak. I like this stuff. That one was called RSI, and you're listening to it here on Radio Orbit KOPN Columbia. It's Mike. It's about 10 minutes before midnight on the 10th of December, 2018, and we got about 5 minutes here before we get to our guests at the top of the hour. So let me say a couple things really quickly about some people who used to be with us and who are no longer with us, and I'd like to remember. First one, John Lennon. I don't have to say too much about who he was, the fantastic writer and singer-songwriter for the Beatles, among, of course, his own material as well. But anyway, John Lennon died on December the 8th, 1980. So, wow, almost... 39 years ago since John Lennon died, and what a contribution he made to art and music in general. And I still love the Beatles, and I sure appreciate everything that John Lennon did for us and left with us. Jim Morrison, on the other hand, was born on the same day. He was born on December the 8th in 1943, and again, one of my favorite singers, I guess, a real rock star, actually. I mean, Morrison, in my mind, was one of the true rock stars. Of course, you have to die before the age of 30 to be considered that, but again, left a tremendous amount of remarkable music and poetry, actually, behind as well. So, John Lennon, Jim Morrison, Nina Greboy. This is a sort of a different sort of person, but Nina Greboy is a woman who was born on the 8th of December in 1918. And I'm familiar with her because she actually got involved with Alan Watts and Timothy Leary and Ram Dass and that whole gang. She was born in Vienna and had to flee the Nazis and all this stuff, and was in detention camps in North Africa, and had a wild young life. And eventually she got involved in the counterculture in the 60s and became an advocate for psychedelic research and experimentation, and was really one of the first real feminists out there. I mean, she was a real advocate for women long before it was sort of hip to do that. So anyway, she died in 1999, but her birthday was December the 8th in 1918. So here's a tip of the hat to Miss Nina Greboy. And there's one other person who I'd like to mention. His name is Grandfather Martin Gashwizioma. And Grandfather Martin was a Hopi elder that I had the great privilege and pleasure of meeting in 2002 at an elders gathering in Denver, Colorado. And he was a remarkable man. He died in 2015, but he was actually born on December 7th in 1922, the same day as Pearl Harbor, at least the day, not the year. But at any rate, those four people, Grandfather Martin and Nina Greboy, Jim Morrison, John Lennon, here's to all of them. They all were remarkable people and really contributed a lot to the American culture and to the global culture as well. So, all right, we got about 5 more minutes, so let's play one more here from Beak, and we'll come back at the top of the hour with my guest Josh Galetly. And I think we're talking to Josh. I think it's in Sydney or somewhere around Sydney, Australia. But at any rate, something like that. We're going to play this one called "Merry Christmas, Face the Future." Again, this is Beak. You listen to it on KOPN Columbia Radio Orbit.
All with nature's true desire. We hide. listening to Radio Orbit with Mike Hagan on KOPN 89.5 FM.
Meet me in the nuance between the absolutes. We'll bathe among the chaos and belong to no man's land. My guest tonight is a remarkable artist. I don't know him very well, and I don't know much about his background. I only know that his work is incredible, and we have an interesting story about how we came to know one another. So without further delay, we're going to let him tell us a little bit more about himself and say hello to Josh Galletly. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
Leon, thanks a lot for inviting me on your show.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We're talking with Josh from, I'm not sure exactly what part of Australia. Where are you at, Josh?
I'm in a place called Byron Bay. It's the most easterly point in Australia, so it's about halfway up the east coast. No, sorry, the west coast is Perth.
Okay.
Sydney's on the east coast in the south.
Okay, so you're not.
And then Byron Bay's about halfway up.
Okay, so you're Australia's a big place. For perspective, how far are you from Sydney?
Yeah, about a 10-hour drive.
Wow, still a long way. Okay, all right. Well, again, thank you for being on the program. What time is it there? It's 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's midnight here in the middle
of the day.
Yeah, I guess we're about 17 hours or so behind you, and we're just past midnight here in mid-Missouri. So, okay, we got all that cleared up. Let's talk a little bit about who you are and where you come from. Are you from Australia originally?
No, I'm not. So I'm from England. I grew up about 20 minutes down the road from where Beak are from Bristol.
Is that right?
I'm from a place called Taunton, in the southwest of England, yeah. So I grew up there, and then I moved over here to Australia about 6 years ago.
Huh. Were you familiar with those guys, by the way, from Beak before?
No, I wasn't. I'm familiar with the guy, Jeff Barry, because I was another band from Bristol called Portishead.
Yeah, Portishead.
When I was growing up. And I just found out about Beak a couple of months ago through listening to Portishead again, and was like, I wonder what else they've been working on or what else is going on, and found out about Beak.
Well, I found out about him from you, and I've been listening to him for the last 3 or 4 days, and really impressed. Really cool stuff.
They get under your skin, don't they?
Now, for the listeners, it'll take me and Josh a minute here to get the timing thing done. There's a little bit of a delay between the phones here, so I've done it a few times in the past where I've had interviews where there was a little bit of a delay from overseas. So it'll take me a minute to get used to it, but that's no big deal. Josh, what's your art background? And let me give out the website first of all, because we're talking to an artist on the line tonight, and it's a little bit difficult to put some of this stuff, as far as the visual stuff, across over the air. So if you are on the web, you can go to my website at MikeHagan, HAGAN.com, or you can go to Josh Galletly Art. And that's JoshGalletly.art, JoshGalletly.art, or you can link right over there from the front page at my website. But if you do that, then you'll have a chance to see some of the work that Josh does, and it's beautiful and really cool. And I'm interested in finding out where his inspiration comes from and how he learned to do the stuff that he did. So background-wise, do you have an artistic background in your family, Josh?
Not really, no. My dad, he used to be a cartographer, so I guess he's got a background in like drawing with like maps and like ocean charts.
Cool.
So I guess as part of that, but no one else really. It's just something I think I just picked up from when, obviously growing up. Everyone draws when they're a kid, and I just kept doing it, I guess.
And with regard to school and education, I mean, did you have just kind of a standard education, or did you concentrate on the arts? And
Well, I just went to a normal school, and I was just painting and just doing art as a hobby, just in my free time. Didn't really get on so much doing art at school. I felt like I had things that I wanted to draw, and I had my own ideas about what I wanted to make. And obviously, like in a school, you've got to follow a curriculum and go through these, the steps and stuff. And so I just thought, well, I'll just do what I need to do to get by through, like in the class, and just keep it as my own thing. I just do it for myself. And then so I just carried on doing that, and then didn't do art at college or anything. I studied geology and environmental science and product design. And then I went through the stages. It was like, well, I'm not sure what else I'm supposed to do, so I went to university like everyone else. I was told that, you've got to get a degree, then you'll get a good job.
Right.
And so I followed that route, and I went to university. I was studying a course there that I was kind of lost interest in pretty quickly, and I found there was an art college just down the road from where I was studying. And at that time, I'd started making T-shirts and things for some of my friends, just printing out work on them. And people seemed to quite like them, and so I just, applied for a course, just a year-long course, like a foundation degree, where you kind of explore different types of like artwork, like digital stuff, painting, photography. It's like a really varied course, so it gave me a good grounding in,
right.
Just like playing with different materials, basically.
Well,
so yeah, I did that, and then carried on to through that course, and discovered that I was really interested in illustration and like how you can communicate ideas visually. And that just became something I got stuck into that basically. And so I went and studied that at university in Falmouth in the southwest of England, like down on the coast, so I could surf. And just went from there.
Well, I've been watching your Instagram posts for a few years, or for a couple years at least, and it seems that even over those couple years, at least what you put up there, there's been sort of a different phase or two that I've just sort of recognized. I know that you were doing.
Yeah.
Before we even get into that, it seems that the stuff, when I look at the artwork that's up on your website, it's essentially sculpture. At least it looks sort of like sculpture and painting combined. Have you always been into sculpture, or were you just primarily painting when you were younger?
I've mostly been painting and drawing, but I've also really been just interested in anything to do with woodwork. That's my kind of I just love playing with wood. I like the smell of it. I just love being around it. And so I refuse to paint on canvases basically. I'd rather paint on wood. So I've been cutting wood to paint on, and been using plywood, and I guess experimenting with that, and then discovered that as you sand into the plywood, you expose the layers. And I don't know, I found that really satisfying to look at. I guess my other interest in geology and looking at the earth and stuff, and to show the.
I can see how your interest in geology kind of comes through when I look at sort of the layering on some of those works. And again, for people out there, if you'd like to see what we're seeing, just hop on the web and go to MikeHagan.com and click on the link right there on the front page. It's just a big picture of one of Josh's art pieces here. For perspective, Josh, for example, the one that I read, there's a small clip under the painting that's called No Man's Land that I read before you came on the air. Is that something that you wrote as well?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I guess that's kind of sums up the idea of those.
a beautiful poem and it's a beautiful painting. Give me an idea for perspective on the size of that piece.
So those are about 60 centimeters tall, by about 45 centimeters wide. They're not that kind of that big.
Yeah, so
they were kind of tests, those pieces too. So I'm just trying to work out the technique and how it all kind of ties together. So I'm starting to work now on some bigger stuff, which is about 2.5 meters, 1.5 meters.
Well, they're so cool. They look so cool. I'm fascinated by it. I'm always stunned by artists in general, just because I'm not an artist, and at least not in the physical sense. I don't draw very well, and I'm not a sculptor, and I'm not a very good musician, but I'm an appreciator of it, and I see some things like the work that you do and many other people, and I just go, wow, it's just a whole different sort of thing.
I was going to say, it's funny to hear people say, I'm not an artist, I do this and this. Because like you're still creating things. You're creating things every day when you wake up.
Yes, I agree.
You have a radio show. You're bringing ideas together and you're pushing them out into the world, like through you. And so I'd say that's pretty creative. That's an artistic kind of pursuit, I think.
Yeah, and I see that, and I try to make a cohesive show. And there are some shows that are better than others. Like you may think that one work of art is, in your opinion, better done than a different one or something like that. And I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
What you went through a period, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, where you were doing a lot of things with bricks, and I've always wanted to ask you what that was about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I moved over to Australia about 6 years ago, and I got sponsorship through a fashion company, a clothing label. Who sponsored me, and then they employed me as a designer.
Oh, cool!
And like I jumped at that chance because I knew I wanted to move to Australia. I knew I wanted to live over here, and I was when I was living in England, I was like, well, I've got to do everything I can to get out of England, basically. And I knew I wanted to come to Australia because of the lifestyle, spending more time outside. I'm a keen surfer, and I like spending time in the ocean and stuff. When I've been over here visiting, it seems it's a lot easier to live here with a lot less money. And I don't, I live quite a simple life. I don't. There's not too many things I want. Other than just being able to jump in the ocean every now and again. So I came over here and I did that work. I was working in the fashion industry, and pretty quickly got a bit jaded by it, really, just in terms of how it works, like the format of it, how you end up, because a brand creates its own identity. And people buy into the idea of the brand, and they start wearing logos and the clothing associated with the brand. And it just got me really thinking about why do we do this? Why do we express ourselves through someone else's logo or someone else's
and essentially do free advertising
flag
for them,
that represents their ideas. Like it just I could see aspects of it where I was like, wow, I can really understand why people like this brand, because they're like pushing the limits of something, or they're moving in a different direction, and they're communicating something that's valuable. And for the most part, the company I was working for was doing that and continues to do that. But then there's another whole side of it, which becomes you then got to sell the thing that you're making. And so I was interested in how that works, like what devices are people using to sell things. And then that just opened up a whole other field of what that is, like the economic system, and how that affects people, and how that changes people's behaviour. Like creating a demand for something can it plays with people's perceptions
Mm.
In order to sell a product.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much science
I guess
goes
that's
into
it.
it now. The marketeers
Yeah.
and the advertising people. It's very very well figured out these days. They know exactly what they're trying to do, and then they're pretty good at getting it done. Actually.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like, I guess, like in terms of like dealing with the sales department for the company I was working for, you get feedback from the buyers that would say, this kind of design's really selling. You should do more things like this, or people are really buying circles on a t-shirt this year. You should make some more circles, and like that kind of idea. And I was like, well, it's not. It stopped being about making artwork, and it started becoming about like a formula and jumping through these. I guess like the same when I was at school, like jumping through these hoops of what's expected. And to me, that just went against everything that creativity is about. I think that's about like exploring new areas, like going into the unknown and bringing something back. Playing around with ideas, experimenting, and that there's a part of that that's still there in terms of doing graphic design, but it's not. It's way more formulaic than I think people seem to think or realize.
Well, the series that you did, I guess it was called Stockholm Syndrome. You did some teas and
well, sorry, there's a section on the site which I've called Stockholm Syndrome, and then everything in there is kind of just work that's I've pulled together, but it's not necessarily connected, other than under this idea that I was seeing an interpretation of Stockholm Syndrome as obviously represents like a captor that you become fond of.
Right.
I kind of see that as the advertising industry and our current economic system and how that works. Like we almost are captivated by it, but then we've kind of grown to like it and to work with it and cooperate.
I think it's true, and for those out there who aren't familiar, I think most of my listeners probably know, but I'm going to actually read the definition since you've got it right here on the page. Stockholm Syndrome, it's a noun from psychiatry. It says, an emotional attachment to a captor formed by a hostage as a result of continuous stress, dependence, and a need to cooperate for survival. And yeah, you can almost see that when people are wearing their shirts with the logos on them or their shoes or whatever. They become a slave almost to the captor.
Yeah, not outside of clothing and fashion as well, though. Just in terms of like people, you need money to live, and so like you depending on what your income is like, there's a certain element of fear. Like, am I going to be able to pay this next bill? Am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
So you don't have to go and do things and spend your time in a way that you wouldn't normally spend it, just for the sake of being able to carry on, I guess. And I see that as a kind of at the time I was seeing that like I was in a bit of a dark place, I guess. And I guess like the original question going back to that was like where the paintings of bricks and stuff came from. Without a that, I was looking at all of these objects that we were taking from Australian culture, like a beer bottle, like people smoking, all of these like symbols that become slogans for like a youth movement, and it just boiled down to like some marketing guy going, hey, this is selling well, churn out a bunch of this. And I was just like trying to weigh out like, well, what does that mean? Like, what's going on there? Like, could you just take any object and repeat it? Same way, like how the pop art, how that kind of works.
Right.
You just repeat the same thing over and over again. Do people start liking it? Like, do they care what it's about, or what's going on there?
Right.
So it was partly that, and I was painting individual bricks because I was thinking, well, a brick's pretty useless by itself. It needs other people around it to support something greater than itself. But then it's also like an object that's been taken from the earth. It's been shaped by a machine, squashed into these cubes, and then it's stuck into like a regimented system, like this is what you use a brick for. And I was thinking, well, maybe there's other uses for it outside of that, individually. And I don't know, I was like kind of cross-referencing that with stuff that was going on in my life at the time. And I was reading a lot of Terence McKenna's work, and which is how, kind of led me to you, I guess.
Yeah, I think might as well tell the quick story about how you and I kind of came across one another. It was, I don't know, a few years ago, and I have a sort of defunct website that's called findtheothers.org, and I still own the site, and there's actually still something up on it. I never kind of let it go away, but it never really came into what I was hoping that it would. But at any rate, Find the Others was a phrase that Timothy Leary allegedly had said during an interview in the late 60s. I forget exactly who he was talking to, but somebody said to him, again, I don't think this was ever recorded, but the line was that they asked him, okay, so what do you do after you tune in, turn on, and drop out? And he said, you find the others. And I thought that was an attractive statement that really, just to me, meant, find other people like you, find the like-minded people, you find your tribe, sort of, and then you sort of find your home, regardless of who you are. You just got to find your gang. And anyway, maybe you tell the rest of the story, Josh.
I've got the phrase here. Maybe I'll read this out to you. I've got the paragraph here.
Yes, please.
From Timothy Leary, where it ends in that. So it's a full quote. It says, admit it. You aren't like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. But it seems the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider, watching the normal people as they go about their automatic existences. For every time you say club passwords like, have a nice day, and weather's awful today, you yearn inside to say forbidden things like, tell me something that makes you cry. What do you think deja vu is for? Face it, you even want to talk to that girl in the elevator. But what if the girl in the elevator and the balding man who walks past your cubicle at work are thinking the same thing? Who knows what you might learn from taking a chance on conversation with a stranger? Everyone carries a piece of the puzzle. Nobody comes into your life by mere coincidence. Trust your instincts. Do the unexpected. Find the others.
Wow.
Yeah, well, when I read that, like, there's so many things I could relate to in that, and I was, certain things were happening at the time in my life where I was looking for those kind of signals and I guess coincidences, things that happen. And directly from that, I was like, find the others it's a great slogan. it's encouraging you to do something, to take an action, to communicate with other people, and something that everyone can do. Like, find other people that are thinking how you think and that encourage you. Just following that led me to emailing you asking, hey, Mike, is that domain name available? Are you using it for anything? Maybe you could make something with this.
Maybe you and I should do something with it, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I've had a few ideas for different things, but
honestly, maybe that's something we'll talk. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that off the air. Okay, so Terence, of course, was sort of the inheritor of the tradition from Timothy Leary. And when did you first come across Terence McKenna?
I guess around about the same time. I think it maybe about 6 years ago. 6 years ago.
So after his death.
And so the main reason I found out about McKenna was through another quote I read, which was him talking about culture and his idea that culture is not your friend. And when I first read that, I thought, hang on, that goes against everything that I understand about what culture is. Culture is a thing that's celebrated, that people are proud of, that get people to, go and fight for their country under. And who is this guy saying culture's not your friend?
Right.
So I started digging around to see who he was, what he was all about, and the more I looked into him, the more I was just captivated by him. He's just a brilliant communicator. like poetic, and it's just I love listening to him.
Yeah, he was a thrill to listen to. He was such a great speaker and such a great thinker, and was able to put his thoughts into words so well. And he was just a captivating guy to watch and to listen to. And I totally get it. I had the same experience, although many years earlier. I kind of came across him around 1997 or so when he was still alive, and actually had the chance to become friendly with him and some of his family. Actually, his brother Dennis and I are still pretty good friends. He's been on this show many times, and just a remarkable couple of people. His brother Dennis is, in his own right, just a brilliant and remarkable man.
Yeah, I've seen some interviews with Dennis as well. I've got just a quick question about Terence.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet up with him, I've only ever heard him talking in interviews, and he just seems to speak so clearly and so just like a continuous stream of thought, basically.
Yeah.
Was he like that in person? Like if you're having dinner or something, was it that kind of? He's going to talk, and I've just got to sit back and listen.
I never actually met him in person. We spoke on the telephone a number of times, and we had a long series of email conversations that went on for a few years. But yes, my impression is that he was just like that with anybody, whether it was a private conversation or whether it was something in public where he was speaking to a large group. He was just we had a thing, I don't know if he ever spoke about it, but one thing that he and I used to talk about, we called it the word well. And the word well was basically language and the ability of each individual to draw from it. We all have this well, but there's different stuff in the word well, you know what I mean? And for Terence, he was a master of his own word well, and it was deep and wide and expansive, and he was just an absolute master at utilizing the language.
Definitely, yeah. His ideas about language and what that does for us and how we use it. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it really does shape the way we really see the world and the way we experience it. I think that one of my favorite phrases that Terence used to say was, the world is made of language.
Yeah.
And
when I first heard that, I was like, what? I didn't understand that. I didn't understand what he means. And, another great thing that I've got from him is this idea that someone else's understanding is almost useless to you. So you have to find your own understanding for things. Mm-hmm. And so I guess a lot of my recent artwork has come out of that, trying to get my head around other people can talk about culture and they have their ideas about what it means and what it does, but I need to know what it is for myself, so that when I'm talking about it, I understand it. And so the paintings and stuff I've been doing have come from that. What does culture look like? How does it function? Mm-hmm. What does it do to people? And who does it serve? All of those kind of ideas. And the understanding I have may be completely different from other people's, but through just exploring different techniques and ways of making marks, and I feel like I've got an understanding now that I can communicate to other people and could be useful for people, only in the sense that it's been useful for me.
Right. Okay, hey, look, we're at the bottom of the hour here. Let's take a little break here, and we'll come back and talk in a few minutes, all right?
Sure.
All right, everybody, my guest is Josh Galletly. You can find him on the web at Josh Galletly. That's JoshGalletly.art, joshgalletly.art. And you can also link over there from my site at mikehagan.com. All right, we'll get back with Josh here in just a few minutes. We've got, hey, Josh, I think I'm going to play this one. Is it called Breen Down?
Yeah, Breen Down.
What a great song, right?
It is. It really is.
All right, well, sit back and enjoy it, and we're going to play this one here from Beak. Once again, this is called Breen Down, and you can thank Josh Galletly for the music tonight too, because I was not familiar with Beak until tonight. So thanks to Beak and thanks to Josh, and this is once again Beak on Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia.
so the people gotta get along. The future's kinda sketchy, so the people gotta get along. Standing in the frame, pulling apart, trying to be someone, make a new start. Feel I left one, feel I left one, but I can't stand the pain. Hold on my heart.
All right, it's Mike. You listen to KOPN Columbia, Radio Orbit on the air now, and it is about 12:35 or so, close to 12:40 on, I guess now it's Tuesday, the 11th of December, 2018. My guest on the line with me from about 10 hours north of Sydney, Australia, is the remarkable artist Josh Galetly. Josh, thanks so much for sticking around, man.
Hi, Mike. No problem.
Yeah. All right. That's one from Beak, by the way. That one's called Breen Down. If you want information about the music, you can go on the internet and search for Beak, B-E-A-K, music. And they're also on the social media sites that I'm not willing to mention the names of. It's funny, Josh, we were talking earlier about branding and the Stockholm Syndrome and this sort of thing, and I've made a point of it over the last. I'm trying. It's hard, but over the last month or so, I've made a real conscious effort to not use any of the branded names that we use all the time for social media and for like a web search, for example. Right? I will not say do a blank search. I just say go do a web search. I won't use the word. I'm sick of it. Anyway, so I'm trying hard to I mess up once in a while, but I'm trying hard to do it. So if you want information on Beak, you can go on the web and you can find information about Beak. Just look for music and Beak. All right, and again, Josh, thanks for the tip on Beak. Those guys are great.
Yeah, but just If I heard that song, I've never heard anything else like that.
Yeah, definitely different for me as well.
Especially, yeah.
All right, cool. So back to our discussion about art and your business in the art world. So to close out that thought about the bricks, and I had a thought while we were listening to that song. Again, it's something that Terrence said years ago. You were talking about how a brick outside of a building is different. In other words, by itself, what is the brick by itself, right? It's different than what it is when it's part of a structure. And Terrence years ago talked about electrons and about the difference between an electron that's in a stream of electricity, in a current, for example, right, where you've got a whole stream of electrons and they're all moving in this direction or that direction, and they act differently. Electrons act differently when they're in a group, when they're in a current, than they do when they're by themselves. If you can isolate an electron, it will act completely different than an electron that's involved in a current with a bunch of other electrons. And of course, he extended that metaphor and actually applied it to human beings and about how different we are when we're in the group, in the flow of other humans, whereas when we're by ourselves or in very small groups where we're very close to one another, it's an absolutely different creature,
Yeah. So I was just I've been thinking about this a similar kind of concept recently through that idea of something that's in like a cell in your body versus like the human individual as a cell of the earth. And I'm not sure if are you aware of a guy called Bruce Lipton? So he was a cell biologist. He was one of the first guys that was doing stem cell research in the late 60s. And he did this experiment with stem cells. Like, I'm no biologist, this is just from what I remember, that the experiment he did was he took one stem cell and put it, but in 3 different Petri dishes. So it's the DNA of the cell is identical, so it's essentially an identical cell in 3 different dishes. And he changed the environment, so the culture that the cell was growing in the Petri dish, and the same cell, by responding to its environment, grew in one Petri dish he grew fat cells, and in the other Petri dish he grew muscle cells, and in the other one he grew bone. And when I heard that about that experiment, I was thinking about it's to do with he has a whole load of other work that went on to do with it's the cell's perception of its environment that changes what it is. And when I heard that, I was like, well, to me that there's a direct link with how humans work. I imagine with twins, if they're separated and they grow up differently, they become slightly different according to their environment. And that's one way. But then I was thinking of it's your perception of your environment, so which is more important than your actual environment. It's like how you're interpreting the things around you can influence your what you become, your biology.
Was that did you say Bruce Lipton?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I guess I didn't hear correctly, but I actually interviewed him a few years ago.
Right. Okay.
There was a book called The Biology of Belief, I think was the one that I read, and he outlined some of that stuff. Remarkable research. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think there's so much in that. How that applies to people's lives.
Yeah, I think it's a fractal thing. It applies internally to the individual cells, and it applies externally to the entire organism.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we've kind of made our way to culture, and one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the relationship between art and culture, and I sort of want to add technology into that mix as well. Maybe not all at the same time, but let's talk a little bit about art and culture and what you're trying to do as an artist. What are you trying to express in the work that you do, and how does that relate to the sort of the cultural situation? Sure.
Well, I guess rather selfishly, I'm not really trying to express anything other than I'm literally just trying to find things out for myself. What do I think about things? What's my understanding of something? And I guess going back to the stuff I've been reading about culture and how that can affect different things. I started drawing, starting with that basic idea of maybe that the stem cell in those Petri dishes, drawing a straight line. And I was thinking of so if I draw another line next to that straight line, because I've drawn it with my hand, it's going to have all these tiny little, wobbles and wavers in the line where I can't get it straight. So I copy those wavers in the line next to it. Then those wavers, they become accentuated and they move out a little bit more. So by the time I get to the third, fourth, fifth line, you're starting to see a shape forming. And it's to me that kind of symbolizes the growth of something. So you notice the wobble in the line, you pay attention to it, and the more attention you give that wobble, or that thought, or that idea, the bigger it grows. And I feel like that's the relationship there with technology and how we're using things at the moment is attention. Attention is a form of currency. Everyone's competing for your attention. They just want to get your eyeballs in front of this advert, or to read this article because there's an advert either above it or below it, and that's what they can sell. They can sell your attention.
Right.
So I guess the idea of culture coming from that. So if we don't know what it is that we're looking at, and we don't know where we're paying attention, so what are you deliberately focusing on? Like if you're just noticing things because other people have noticed them, like, do you also realize that you're just helping build this idea, whatever the idea is? Like maybe the idea is Beak, the band Beak. Like I found it slightly interesting. Well, not slightly, I'm interested in that band. I told you about it. You're interested, and now you're playing it on your radio show. I don't know how many listeners you have that may also be interested in it. And so it starts to build momentum, and it becomes its own thing.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like language itself, you know. I had a great friend who was a Native American, an old Lakota man who taught me a lot of important things, in my opinion. But one of the things that he used to talk about was the actual process of speech, when you actually release a word or a series of words into the world. You know, he would say to me very seriously, you know, to watch what you say. So, you know, you can think almost anything. So you can pretty much think what you want, but just, you know, let the thought come and let the thought go. But do not verbalize the thought unless you've really put some, you know, some thought into it, because once you release the words out into the world, they take on their own thing, and they may have an impact that's way outside of what you may have even ever imagined, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, I was thinking about that just from you, like, inviting me to be on the radio. Is, you know, I'm like, wow, what if I say something really dumb or stupid I haven't thought through? Where's that going to go? And I'm like,
oh my God, I do it every week. But you know, that's a chance you take, and it's worth it. Exactly. Because of the value that comes out of the conversation. You know, I'm willing to make a fool of myself every once in a while if I stumble on words or if I say something stupid or whatever. I'm willing to do it because that's not the only thing that I'm doing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of other stuff outside of that that's actually quite valuable. So.
And also, like, from the other point of view, like, okay, so if you know, what if you didn't do it because of those reasons? It's like, oh, I'm not going to go on the radio because I don't know what I'm going to say. And then you end up kind of isolating yourself and not doing things, and that's worse. That's way worse than making a fool of yourself, I think.
Yeah, I think you got to be able to step out on the edge once in a while if you're going to have some experience in the world, and that's the way you learn and become a character in the play, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so inspiration in art, are there any famous names that people might recognize when you think about the men and women that may have inspired your artwork? Tell me a little bit about how you kind of got the ideas for some of the things that you do.
It's really difficult, because that was one of my kind of gripes when I was studying, like, doing art. You know, at school would be shown all of these, you know, other artists like Picasso, like all these, like, famous painters and stuff. And you know, I'm interested in those things, but I've always found it interesting to try and get inspiration from outside of your own field. So listening to music, like films, like just anything other than someone else's visual drawings or paintings. Because of that, how, you know, my understanding of how culture works, you just end up copying things, and you end up, you can't help but be influenced by the things that you like.
Right, I agree.
So part of it is because of that, and then part of it is because of coming from the way of, like, you know, I'm interested in communicating ideas almost more so than I am, you know, creating something visually, you know, appealing. I want to make sure that when I look at that thing, it represents the idea to me. And then after that, if someone else gets something from it, then that's great. But the work I'm kind of doing, and I'm lucky in regards that I'm not in a position where I need to be making money from the artwork. So I can take bigger risks, and I can do things where I'm like, well, I'm just going to make this because I'm trying to work something out, and then they're just byproducts of thinking.
Pardon me, what sort of a studio? Do you work in a studio, or do you work outside, or where do you prefer to do your work?
So, like, the wood carving stuff I do outside, and then painting and stuff I do in the studio. Like, I rent a studio space with a photographer. and it's nice having a mix of people. But so I guess in the last 6 months or so, I've kind of taken more of a more dedicated approach to making artwork, and decided that this is well, I'm trying to grab every spare minute to make stuff anyway. I'm like, well, why don't I just really just go try and do this, spend as much time as I can making things, and step outside of my comfort zone and start showing people things I'm making and talking about them, and maybe there's someone else might see something and they might already have their own ideas going on, that they'll look at something and maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll send them off in a completely different direction, but it's going to add something. Even if they look at it and they say, I don't get it, or it's useless, it means nothing to me, or I don't like it because of this thing. I still see that as a positive, because it's helped them determine what they do like.
Well, it draws.
That's what it needs to do.
It's supposed to draw some sort of a response, whether it's positive, negative, or something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's.
I think the worst thing is for someone to just be like, no, it's nothing.
Right. Yeah, you almost rather have them not like it, But I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that, again, the personal side of it? Same thing with a particular band or a song or something, is that the individual, like you said, you make the piece of art, and hopefully it comes out the way that you wanted it to come out. In other words, you had an idea, and you tried to express the idea as best you could through your art, and hopefully at the end of the project it's close to what you wanted. Now, when somebody else views it, they may get something completely different out of it, and it has nothing to do with what you may or may not have wanted them, or you might not even care what they think about it, right?
Yes, well, yeah, there is an element of that. I guess that's what I said before. It's like it's such a self-indulgent kind of pursuit, I think, to make art, and it's like a process for working out ideas for me. And then once I've done that, I've always gone, well, it's kind of just served its purpose now. I don't need to keep hold of that thing, that object, or I can move on to the next thing, and what am I going to do to try and work out this other problem, or how am I going to find a solution to this thing I've been thinking about? And then just by exploring things with materials, like playing with things with your hands, it helps me to think about things in that way. Just by actively doing something. So whether that's like scratching into some wood, or knocking stones together, just anything where you're doing something with your hands, it presents new problems, and you start, I start thinking about things from a different point of view, and I find that really helpful when you're trying to solve problems with the solutions. Like being able to see things differently throws off a different set of circumstances.
The series that you have on your website, and again, Josh's website is joshgaletly.art, and you can get there from my site as well. But there's a series, Series 03, that's called Culture by Default, and this is where you have some of the pieces that you were describing earlier that have essentially almost wave forms on them. I might describe it like that. Are these the same paintings that you were talking about, where you start out with just trying to draw a straight line, and then you have to follow the
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got no idea what they're going to look like by the end of it. Some of them are like 2.5 meters. So I just start drawing a line, and for me it's really therapeutic. I don't have to think about anything. I'm just drawing lines, basically.
Right.
And it grows into its own thing. I've got no set kind of intention of I'd like to make this shape here or make this bigger. And I guess going through that process has taught me about this idea of constantly having to reset, go back to your initial thing, what am I actually doing here? All I need to do is copy the previous line as best as I can. Focus on the details, copy it. If I keep going back to that thought, then I end up with, to me, an honest covering of the panel that I'm painting. But as soon as I start noticing a pattern in it, and I'm like, oh, wow, that looks good. I imagine what it would look like if it went over here. And I have to keep reminding myself to go back to that original thought and say, no, you're not doing that. You've got to try and stay true to the original idea.
Well, I know that's somehow wave inspired as well. I know I've seen some images of ocean waves, and there's the spreading out of a ripple perhaps, or something like that. Definitely I can see that sort of influence in this. Is there a mindset behind the actual sort of spreading out of the thing?
Well, I guess it's like I'm really interested in like waves, and like just either waves in the ocean, but like all kinds of other waves, like just energy fields in general, basically. How that's this idea. There's a line in a Patti Smith song, which is about like a sea of infinite possibility, and I love that. I love that idea that there's an energy field that kind of everything comes out of that, basically, and there's an infinite amount of possibility in that field, and everything comes out of it.
It's remarkable when you think, if you broaden the view, it goes back to some of the stuff that Terence used to talk about, like literally the beginning of time, the beginning of history is almost like one of those paintings. It's just a iteration after iteration after iteration, and starting from essentially nothingness, or nothingness, and just some sort of void, and then maybe nobody knows, but then eventually it spreads out into the whole universe, and we're part of it,
Yeah, that's my understanding of well, at the moment, but as far as where I am now, like my understanding is exactly that. Is essentially like nothing going on, like, and then there's the awareness of something, so the awareness of the vibration, and then you notice that more energy gets fed to that vibration, the vibration grows, and then it starts to spread and expand in different directions. And I feel like that's when you go through that cycle when you go to sleep at night, like you switch off, everything slows down, and essentially from your point of view, you're not conscious anymore. Basically, you wake up in the morning, and then you slowly start getting back into reality.
Yeah, it's so weird.
There's a slow movement. You build on things, and I guess like where this a lot of artwork I'm going with at the moment is this series is creating things by default, by repeating history and building on what's gone in the past. So like the opposite of that is, I guess where I'm leading is like, well, if I start with that same straight line and I want to end up with something that I'm thinking about, will the act of just thinking about it whilst I'm drawing those lines, will that shape, will that idea come out of that field?
Interesting. Yeah. We're at the top of the hour, but before we go to a break, before I forget, are you familiar with the guy Stephen Wolfram? And I'll find out at the break, and maybe we can talk about it after that, because it sort of reminds me of this, and I have a feeling that you're probably familiar with it if I can get the terminology right. So anyway, we are at the top of the hour, so we're going to have to take a break here, Josh, and we'll come back in a few minutes. I'm going to let you pick the tune. What would you like to hear? You had a few on your playlist here. You got anything in particular you'd like to hear?
Wow. Let me take a look. When We Fall.
When We Fall.
Yeah,
all right.
Either Brazilian or When We Fall.
All right, great. We're going to hear one here from Beak. This one's called When We Fall, and in about 5 minutes we'll come back and continue our conversation with Mr. Josh Galetly. Thanks, Josh. Be back in a minute, okay?
Sure.
All right, everybody, it's Mike. You listen to Radio Orbit, and once again on the web, joshgaletly.art, and you can link up to his site from my place at mikehagan.com. Once again, this one's called When We Fall. It's Beak on Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia.
As we stand in line in the pouring rain, my song with the sound of the children left behind. Makes us choke on the fear even more as the smoke becomes thick and all we can see is the flames and the fading forms. Returns to the naked world we flee, with our medals still never worn. When we fall to the sea, and we will be assured for what we believe can return to us all, to the will of our masters' drums we strike, filled with hate that feels before, with the thoughts of the ones we left behind is enough to live for us all. When we fall to the sea, and we will be sure for what we believe can return to us all. When we fall to the sea, and we will be sure for what we believe can return to us all. When we fall to the sea, and we will be sure for what we believe can return to us all.
That one's called When We Fall. That's Beak once again. You're listening to it here on Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia. It's Mike, and welcome back to the program. It's about 10 minutes after 1 in the morning, or about 10 minutes after 6 in the afternoon if you're living in Australia like my guest. And we will say welcome back to the program. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, I had a email during the break there, and the question has to do with art and culture. We've been talking about art and culture a little bit. Anyway, this person says, culture is said to be reflected in the art of any particular epoch or era. What does Josh see now being reflected in art that represents the current culture?
I'm seeing such a wide range of artwork. And I think that in itself is something like we've got more access to images and to artworks than we've ever had before. And so I feel like there's just way more of everything. Like people are working, they're working more basically, and the more people are doing it, more people are getting involved with things, they're sharing things because it's easier to do so. And so, like, I'm not seeing anything specific, like a specific style of movement or anything. I'm sure there are, but yeah, I think the focus is kind of like, I can only speak from my own point of view, that it's kind of shifted away from what things that are trending or anything like that, but more like what's relevant to me in my life and the situation where I'm in right now. Like, is this looking at helping me? Why do I like it? Basically, by asking that question, from some self-inquiry, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. What do you like? Have you noticed any particular styles or?
I think I'm probably the same as you, and I think that my comment that I was going to make after you said there's just sort of more of everything and more people doing more things and different things, and it's the complexification thing that has been going on since the beginning. It's just, again, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, the universe itself, every moment it sort of reiterates itself. It's almost like a video, and it gets refreshed. It's just the refresh rate is really fast, but it's just getting more and more complex and more complicated. I think that's what I see in general with regard to the whole world, and I think that art and music are sort of reflecting that,
Yeah, I think that's maybe it. Is that I am noticing more of that. The idea that things are becoming more and more complex, and people are starting to wonder, like, question things and like the meaning behind things, and I feel like there's a lot more anxiety in people because there's so much going on, and there's almost like a you kind of expect yourself to try and keep up with everything, and it's impossible to do so.
Right.
And I think that can trigger anxiety, and feel like you're not keeping up with the time, or you're not keeping up with what's going on, and you're falling behind, and you're not relevant anymore. And I think like there's artwork in response to that, I guess, that's being created, and stuff to do with social media. I'm seeing a lot of that. Like, I'm really interested in people doing things differently, and using modern technology and stuff in their artwork. People that are doing like processing, like running programs where, almost like in the like artificial intelligence, where there's like robots like generating images and manipulating artwork and things. So I'm really interested in that side of things, like virtual reality and where that's taking us.
Do you use technology in any of your work? Do you ever use? Do you do any like digital artwork or anything like that?
I do, but I've got a weird thing. Like I like everything I'm doing to start with some kind of hand-drawn thing. So it has to come from me. I don't like I'll never sit down and start something on a computer. Like I don't know. I had just something about it. It just I kind of like I want to maximize humanity when I met some like humans, basically.
Right.
I'm on Team Human. So, and but that's not, I use machines, I use computers as a tool to get me where I want to go. But there's something, I like to look at something and see that there's a person behind it.
Showing your artwork, do you show it, or do you actively like work with a gallery or something like that, or is it pretty much like you were saying that just for you right now?
No, like I started to show it more. Like I've had, people have told me like for how long I need to be getting on there showing people, but for whatever reason, I've kept that to myself really, and but I'm starting to focus more like shows and stuff. I've got a show coming up, the beginning of next year, and I'm getting some good feedback from people, which is always great. But just stay true to exploring things where those ideas are coming from, and still trying to working those things out rather than letting like a market influence what you're doing.
All right. Here's a question, and comes from the web, and it's probably relatively simple. It sounds like a simple one, but I don't know the answer of it. And really, this person just asking, what's the difference between modern art and contemporary art? It might be a longer answer than I think.
So I think any artwork that's being made at the moment is contemporary art.
Okay.
It's my understanding. And modern art is it's an era, like between two periods of time.
Okay.
I'm not sure what those periods of time are, because I just look at artwork, like it or I don't, or I end up using it for something else. So that's what's cool in that. Maybe that's relevant, but it's not something I spend a lot of time looking into.
Okay, me either. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Well, I think, again, back to culture and art. I think that's sort of where the meat of the conversation really is, and about how culture is changing so quickly that maybe art in all of its different forms, like you're saying, sculpture, painting, music, radio, whatever it might be, just forms of creative expression are all just sort of kind of blowing up. I don't know what to make of it, though. I mean, it's sort of like, what's the end result of something like that?
Oh, there is no end. There's no end result, I don't think. I think it's just a process, and I think I'd strongly encourage anyone to do anything. I really think it's important to do that. And I think if we go back to what we were talking about before, like selling in a petri dish, or using that analogy of what's happening on a small scale also happening on a larger scale. If the role of a cell in your body is to send messages back to your brain, to your central nervous system, about what's going on in its environment, I think that's what our role is as individuals as well. And I think where the danger is that we start parroting culture rather than using our own senses to get what's going on. So we might feel a certain way about something, and then you have a conversation with a group of your mates, and they all feel a different way about it. And it's very easy for you to just dismiss your own ideas and your own feelings in favour of other people's, because of that, you want to fit in, you want to be accepted. But it's really important, I think, to go with your direct experience, like what McKenna was a massive advocate. That wasn't he saying that your own direct experience is what matters most. Almost to the point where I feel like that's your responsibility, like for being alive, is to be as honest as you can to your own experience.
Yeah, because it's so easy these days to hear. You almost have to be able to hold contradiction in your mind, because oftentimes I'll hear one perspective and I'll say, yeah, I agree, that makes sense, and then I'll hear somebody from a completely different perspective on the same topic, and I'll say, yeah, that kind of makes sense too, and it's very difficult to sort of to reconcile the two.
Yeah, but I guess that's it, isn't it? Like, that's our job, is to reconcile those two.
Yeah,
we have two extremes, and you're like, well, where do I sit? Like, I'm somewhere in between these things, and I feel like that's what's interesting is everyone's seeing things subjectively. Like, everyone, like how say 1,000 people go and watch a film, like that's 1,000 different films, like
right,
that are being watched. Like, everyone's interpreting it through their own body, their own experiences, and they're all different. So that the film's going to mean different things to all of those different people, and they're going to respond to it in a different way. Like, some people are going to come out raving about, wow, that's the best film I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Other people are going to come out and go, what was all that about? Like, that was rubbish. Just, I want my time back. Where's those 2 hours going?
Right. In a way, I think about what you describe. People talk about the multiverse, about multiple universes. And I think that they don't really understand what they're talking about. I think that there are multiple universes, but they all exist right here. And there are 7 billion or plus or minus individual universes here, because everybody is, perceiving and experiencing the world from a unique perspective that is only their own, and it cannot be, you can attempt to describe it, you can attempt to try to get someone to feel, the way you feel from your position, but it's absolutely impossible to have the same experience.
Yeah, that's it. There's a great, just remind me of a great quote from Bill Hicks.
I loved Bill Hicks. Yeah, he was great comedian.
He was talking about positive LSD story, and at the end of it, he goes off on this little rant. And one of the things that's kind of stuck in my mind from that was he was saying, like, we're one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, and I feel like that's so many things I read, and like I keep going back to that. To me, that makes so much sense.
Yeah,
like a flower, a tree, or any living thing. Expressing itself in its own way, but just expressing that one form of consciousness.
Yeah, I believe it. I think I think that makes the most sense. Hey, what about this? I find it ironic, and I've talked about this before, but I'd like to get your take on it. I think that it's ironic that we live in an age of so much information, and yet I had a friend who said, Mike, it's interesting that they call it the age of information and they don't call it the age of understanding. And I thought, yeah, that is interesting, because we historically, one of the bitches of the common man was that he didn't have, or she didn't have, enough information to make valid and legitimate decisions. And now it's sort of the opposite. We have all kinds of information, more than we can actually handle, and yet we still now we have too much information, and yet we still can't make decisions, because now it's the opposite. We're just overwhelmed, and we've got every perspective. We don't know what's right.
Yeah, I think that's it. We don't know what's right. We don't know what information is valid. Like, we don't know how to use it, and I guess everyone just has to figure that out for themselves. I think it does come down to that.
Well, and I think that's
kind of on your own in a sense.
Yeah, and it ties back into art, because I think that the individual expression, creative expression, is the answer to a lot of the negative stuff that we see in culture all the time. I mean, it's perhaps more prevalent now, the rise of fascism and the fall of the nation state, things like that. But art has always been something that has been sort of like an antidote to that type of behavior. And if the art is really being pushed to the metal, like Terence used to say, then maybe that is at least part of the solution. Yeah,
I believe that. I think that's it. Because it comes down to, like, well, what do you need to make art? Like, you need to need to have your own understanding of something. You need to be exploring something. You've got to, I guess, like the similar kind of idea with psychedelics is you've got to go beyond what you know and explore, and but then it's the thing that you bring back, which is useful. It helps, that helps everyone else move forward, because then someone else can look at it and then they can launch from there in a different direction, and then they'll bring something back, and it carries on that way, I think.
May I ask you a personal question about psychedelics? Have you had any experience?
Yeah, I have. Not a lot. I guess like mild psychedelics. I've used cannabis, and I smoked DMT a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And that had definitely had an effect on me, like in terms of it's made me ask a lot of questions, basically, and has given me more of a sense of like there's something else going on here, and like I was brought up as not heavily, but like I was brought up. I went to like a primary school which had like a religious background, with a Christian school, and from about the age of like 7 or 8, I kind of really heavily rejected the idea of a man in the sky and God, and I was kind of really against all of those things, and I think my perspective now is like massively changed. Like it's definitely something that we're interacting with. I don't feel like there is a physical world. There is a physical reality. I also feel like we're creating it. Like, there's something going on in between that we interface with. I'm not sure what that is or how that works, but definitely like through that experience I had is made me a bit more open to things, I think.
Yeah, I think it has that effect, and it really is sort of breaks the cultural programming to a certain extent, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that when we come back. We got to take a break here, but we'll have another 20 or 25 minutes to talk. You going to stick around till the top of the hour with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So let's take a little break here. We'll have a nice long one. We're going to listen to a song here called Wolf Stand 2, and it's about 7 minutes long. So if you're out there listening, this is a chance to go get a beer or use the bathroom or a glass of water or have a smoke or do whatever it is you might do when you've got a nice long break. And then we'll come back again with Josh Galletly in about 6.5 minutes or so, and we will continue the program from there. Josh, stick around. We'll be back in a minute, okay?
Sure.
All right, everybody, it's Mike. You're listening to Radio Orbit on KOPN Columbia, 89.5 FM, and this is Beak. right, that's a song called Wolf Stand 2, and it's from a band called Beak. We've been hearing songs from Beak all night, at least from 11 o'clock on. We've heard a number of songs from their most recent record and a couple from a record or two before that. In fact, we even heard that single about Merry Christmas, Face the Future. All right, it's Mike. You're listening to Radio Orbit on KOPN Columbia. It's about 1:35 on now the 11th of December, 2018. My guest calling in live from down under in Australia, his name is Josh Galetly. He's a fantastic artist, and you can find information about him on the web at joshgaletly.art. That's JoshGalletly, joshgaletly.art. And you can also go there directly from my site at mikehagan.com. And this program will be up in the archives in the next day or so. Once I get an MP3 version of it, I'll throw it up there on the website, and you can download it and share it with somebody if they missed the program or if you weren't able to stay awake for the whole thing. All right, without further delay, let's get back to Josh. Hey there, Mr. Galetly.
Hey, Mike.
So I think you're right. I think your name must have been based on Go Lightly.
Yeah, I think it's from Scotland originally.
Is that right? Is that the background?
Kind of area, and then, yeah, I think so. I think it's Scottish. But yeah, like I think how those names came from trades originally, I guess, and baker, someone was a baker, and I think Galetly is been traced back to like Go Lightly, and I think it was like a name for messengers, and he would like run distances to deliver messages or something.
Very interesting.
It's a nice romantic story.
Where's your family? Is your family still back in the British Isles?
No, so my family moved over to Australia as well.
Oh.
My brother had already moved over here a couple of years before I moved over. And then once me and my brother moved over, my parents, they didn't want to stay in England either, so
wow,
they came over here.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the whole family's here.
I've been there. I was in Australia in, I guess, 1994 or so. I won.
Okay.
Yeah, I won a couple of tickets in a raffle, believe it or not. And me and my girlfriend flew over there on no, was it Iceland Air? No, it was New Zealand Air, I guess it was. And and she had a job, and I didn't have a job, so she stayed for like 2 weeks, and I stayed for like 3 months. and I spent most of my time in a place called Bundaberg. Are you familiar?
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, the rum, that's where the rum's from.
Yeah, they make rum there.
Rum.
And it's also up on the north side of the reef, and there's a bunch of little islands that are only a few miles off the shore, maybe 20, 50 miles off, and you can do some great scuba diving out there, which is what I did most of the time I was there, and it was one of the most thrilling times of my life, frankly.
Any thoughts of coming back over here?
Gosh, if I had the time more than anything, I could probably figure out the money if I had to, and I'd love to take my children there. I've got a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old son, and I'm hoping to actually get them into scuba diving when they get just a little bit older. So maybe down the road a piece here when they're old enough and I've got a little more money saved and we can make a trip down there to Australia. Have you ever done any diving? Have you done that since you've been down there?
I haven't done diving, no. Like I've snorkel, do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm,
I love just being in the ocean, but diving, no. I never got into it. There's something about the idea of being in a situation that you're not supposed to be in, like in terms of like the having to take your own oxygen supply and that kind of stuff. I don't know. There's just something about that which I'm like, no. I'd rather. Like free diving or swim down as far as you can, and yeah, I don't know. it's not like it's not something I'm scared of. It's just something that just doesn't appeal to me. Like in that situation.
No, I understand. That's relatively common. Actually, I think a lot of people sort of feel like that.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, back to art and culture and stuff. And I had a thought while we were listening to the music there. It has to do with culture in the scientific sense, in the laboratory sense, and if people out there are familiar with biology or chemistry to a certain extent. When you culture something in the lab, the goal of your culture is to keep it sterile. In other words, inside your culture, you don't want anything in there except what it is that you're growing. And if something else gets in there, it really messes up your experiments, and it's something that is highly unwanted if you're doing experiments, right, Josh? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So I kind of think about culture in the human sense, a human culture, as the same thing. It's an attempt to keep out invasions and people who are different. Just like in the lab, you're trying to keep out any different, anything other than the mold or the fungus or the bacteria or whatever it is that you're growing in your culture. You want to keep it alone, and you want to keep it sort of walled off from the outside. And
you want to control the environment.
Right. And so I see human culture as the same thing, but it's becoming more and more difficult, in fact impossible, to keep the cultures clean or pure, like they would call it in the laboratory now. And I think maybe that's part of our the cultural dilemma that we all face, is that there really is no particular culture anymore that can kind of stand by itself. And I'll say one other thing and then let you sort of riff on it for a minute, but I would also compare that to the same idea that Terence used to talk about, culture as an operating system, like on your computer. And some people run this operating system, some people run that, but they're mutually exclusive, and you can't you can't run them on top of one another for the most part. And if you get a virus, it's essentially like polluting that culture, on your computer. So anyway, with those sort of metaphors, could you expand on that a little bit? What maybe that's a situation that we kind of have to think about?
Yeah. Like the idea of culture as an operating system, when I first heard that, I was like, well, that makes total sense to me as well. It's this idea that you can only run certain programs. And if you, take that analogy, carry on with that, like a program that you run on a computer.
Mm-hmm.
So like Photoshop, for example, that you run on an operating system. Maybe Photoshop is a belief system, so it could be like a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And you're running that within a culture, and you're limited by what that culture can and can't do. So this idea that you can only the certain things, like within a computer program, you're limited by the scope of the program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, if you were maintaining a belief system, that limits what you can, what you're open to, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where that idea of like culture not being your friend is the idea that, like, it's the purpose of culture, like a successful culture, is one that's, as you described, like in the Petri dish in a lab, it's maintaining itself. It's like it maintains the status quo. It keeps everything the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
but if you want to expand things and move things forward, you need to upgrade. Like, you need to install some new software. You need to
right.
There's that kind of process going on. But then there's also this idea that you can, I guess, like in the same way you clean your computer, like you defragment things, that you can do something to reset back to the start, so you can readdress what's going on. You're like, hang on, what do we actually want to do? What do we need? And then what cultures can we create so that we can fulfill that demand or that need? I think to me that's a useful way of looking at using those kind of analogies.
Yes, I agree. And I think that reset that you're talking about can be, in the right circumstances, helped by the psychedelic experience, in the right set and setting, like we all know we're supposed to do. But
absolutely, I think that's it. I think they're the right. I think they're really powerful, really useful tools, psychedelics. But they just they're not for everyone, basically. And I think they really need to, if people are interested in them, and which a lot of people are, like, it's definitely not something you should go into like as a social thing or as a recreation.
Right.
I don't see it like that at all.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm probably older than you. I'm 54 years old, and even though people are more familiar nowadays with the actual substances, 20 years ago nobody even knew what DMT was. Very few people were even familiar with it. Now everybody knows what it is. With psilocybin mushrooms, of course, they were, they had their popularity in the late 60s and the 70s, but really sort of went out of out of favor. And LSD, of course, has always been there. But it's weird because it seems to me that the intention of the user, what's the purpose of taking the substance? What are you trying to get out of it? That has changed a lot. There are a lot of people in my observation that really are in it for the recreational thing and really not much else. And there's very little, do it by yourself in silent darkness type of thing with, with very serious intention and thought behind it. It doesn't seem to me like there's that much of that going on. And that's when it can be really valuable, I think. And like you're saying, I agree that it's not for everybody, and I've changed my position on that. I used to say everybody should do it, and you should do it now. But now I've sort of softened on that a little bit, and I do think it has to be at the right time, in the right place, and in the right place in your life too. And there may be a time when you shouldn't be doing that, So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well, especially like you guys in America with like legalizing cannabis, in certain states, and I think that's spreading like around the world. And it's going to be coming to Australia. I've got no doubt about it.
Hey Josh, what's the legal classification of cannabis in Australia right now?
They've only just this year they've just legalized hemp seeds as a food, so you can consume them as a food. So we're still a couple of years away from medicinal cannabis being it seems that way.
Okay.
Being accessible. Australia's I'm not sure. There's all kinds of reasons why that is the case, but it would. The climate here is great for growing cannabis, and the uses as you guys I'm sure are experiencing in America speak for themselves. Like the idea that it has no medicinal values, that's just not really helping the powers that be, basically.
Yeah, that cat's sort of out of the bag now,
Turning that line. Yeah, it's been on the back for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're kind of losing a bit of credibility there.
Yep, I agree. All right, well, my friend, we've got just a few more minutes here. You got anything you want to talk about? You got any events coming up, or what do you got going for the future here in the next year or so? Any plans?
I'm just working away, just on the artwork and stuff, and I've been getting some more commissions and stuff. So I'm going on the side and working towards some shows. Looking into doing some bit more work with video and some getting into the virtual reality side of things, I think. And, programming using those kind of tools.
Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of where my interests are at the moment. But yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to come over here to the States?
I haven't been for a while. I came to New York probably about 8 years ago now. I loved it. I'd love to come back over there. Just see what happens, really.
Yep, I understand. All right, my friend. Well, thank you very much for the wonderful conversation and for your incredible artwork. I'm a huge fan, and I love watching you make it and seeing the final product up there on the website. And one of these days, I'd like to see one in person.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks very much for having me on, Mike. It's been a really good opportunity, and I think you're doing a great thing with your show. I've listened to a couple of shows, and it's great.
Well, I sure appreciate it, and I appreciate you being with me, and I appreciate the kind words, and we'll stay in touch, and maybe we will do something with that Find the Other site. Who knows? I got to do something with it. I've had it forever, and you've got some ideas, and I'm finally getting re-energized. I was sort of out of the scene for 9 or 10 years, and I'm finally kind of getting my bearings back and getting back engaged in this sort of thing. So we'll stay in touch, and I'll talk to you off the air here in a minute. Hang on for me, okay? And we'll talk off the air, and then we'll say goodbye for now. And thanks to everybody for listening. And give me a second here, and we'll say that it is 1:51 now on the 11th of December, 2018. I'd like to say hello to all my listener friends out there. Listen over the web. Hello to Mallory, and hello to Emily down there in Texas, and all the other folks who I'm not familiar with who are listening over the web and over the traditional airwaves right here in mid-Missouri, 89.5 FM, blasting 40,000 watts all around the state. And appreciate everybody listening, and hope you enjoyed the program tonight. That was Josh Galetly with me. He's a wonderful artist who makes his home down in Australia. You can find information about him on the web, joshgaletly.art, and you can also link right over to his site from mine at mikehagan.com. All right? Okay, let's see. Email address from me. You can get me at orbitradio@aol.com or mikehagan@mikehagan.com, or just go to the website and click on the email thing. Upcoming guests. Next week, I'm not sure who's going to be on the program. I had something scheduled, but it kind of fell through. So I don't know. It might just be me and you guys next week. Maybe we'll open the phone lines and see what you guys have to say. Dr. Paul Laviolette in a few weeks. He's a brilliant astrophysicist. We'll talk about galactic core explosions and what it's like somewhere outside of the place that we call home. All right, Justin Robertson. He's a falconry expert and a friend of mine who knows a whole lot about hawks and eagles and birds of prey. He'll be on the program here sometime in the next month or so. Stephen Herod Buhner, who I was thrilled to have on many years ago, one of the best guest and one of the most popular guests I ever had on the program back in 07, 08. So Stephen Herod Buhner, he's an herbalist and a healer, really. Fantastic guy that knows more about plants than anyone I've ever met in my whole life. And Rick Levine, I think, hoping to have Rick Levine on New Year's Eve, because we'll actually have a program on New Year's Eve. So we'll do something like astrology or something like that and have somebody prognosticate what the coming year is going to bring. All right. Okay, it's Mike. You've been listening to Radio Orbit on KOPN Columbia. We've been listening to music from the band Beak for most of the program tonight, for all of the program tonight, as a matter of fact. We've listened to a number of songs from them. You can find information about them on the web as well. Again, the band is Beak, B-E-A-K, and really great, cool, funky, psychedelic music that we're listening to. We're going to hear one more on the way out here, and this one is called The Brazilian. And once again, thanks for listening. It's Mike. You've been listening to KOPN 89.5 FM. Stick around. We got Eric P's Sound Legacy coming up at 2 o'clock. And one more here from Beak. This is called The Brazilian. It's Mike, and it's Radio Orbit, KOPN Columbia.